My name's Thor, and you're listening to Cage Radio. 1, 2, 3. Today we're going to be talking about the best fighters promotionally. The guys who are really good at climbing to the top ranks, making successful stays in MMA, or just new ways to edge out their competition in one way or another, to help themselves climb to the top of the ladder in one of the most brutal, unforgiving, low paying, oftentimes, sports in the world. Again, my name is Thor, and this is Cage Radio. And we're going to be starting today with a group of fighters. Not necessarily one fighter, but these three particular fighters are all very, very similar to each other. And at the bottom of the list of guys who I'm going to count in, I should probably count CM Punk at the very, very back of the list, because he didn't really bring anything to the cage. It's hard to even call him a fighter, to be quite honest. But he had a lot of draw because of his pro wrestling experience, and the UFC saw that as a way to market him. There's absolutely nothing to say about the guy in terms of his fighting skills. I know that he worked really, really hard. I know that he trained for a very long time. He really, really, really put a lot of effort into it, but sometimes effort's just not enough. You know, he probably could have done some things to increase his chances. Like, the guy didn't have... Okay, not everybody in the UFC is particularly athletic or strong. Some of the guys get by on having good intelligence. Okay, maybe he didn't have very good fight IQ, but at least he could have had a plan going into his fights. The only thing he was able to do was throw a couple pathetic looking punches that really didn't land, as far as I could tell. And then he just got squashed. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about his draw factor. And his draw factor is, again, the pro wrestling and the fans that would cross over from that. The next guy to bring up in our, let's see here. I guess I have 13 guys on the list. And that would make him number 13. Number 12. 12 and 11, I guess, it could be interchangeable between each other. But I'm kind of stuck between citing Kimbo Slice and Brock Lesnar. They're kind of like the inverse of each other in some ways, fighter-wise. Brock really couldn't strike. Kimbo definitely couldn't grapple. Kimbo had some fundamentals issues. Brock had the same problems. As fighters, Brock was much more complete, though, because I feel like it's much easier to make up a striking game than it is to make up a grappling game. Grappling takes so much longer to get good at. So much longer. Whereas striking is something that people can learn a little bit quickly. It takes a long time to get good at it. And if you're not naturally gifted at it, you'll never be great at it. It's one of those things that has a pretty high learning curve. But I can tell you that I feel like Brock Lesnar was a much better fighter. And since they're in the same weight class, I can guarantee you that if Brock Lesnar fought Kimbo Slice, Brock Lesnar would crush him. And on top of that, I feel like Brock Lesnar would do better in a boxing match against Kimbo Slice than Kimbo would do in a wrestling match against Brock. So, just to point out which one had the higher pedigree and the level of strength. I mean, obviously, Brock was able to become champion and defeat guys who were legitimately very, very, very good, like Frank Mir, like Randy Couture, like some of the guys he had to beat with juice, like when he fought Mark Hunt. Yeah, he was right it up as hell, or on TRT or whatever he was on. I don't remember which supplement he was taking at the time, but it was not a fair. It was not a fair competition between the two of them. Mark Hunt is pretty famous for never having taken anything extra. But yeah, I'm gonna put those two respectively at the 12. I guess I'll slip Kimbo in there, and 11 spot for Brock Lesnar. Great at getting people in the seats, though. The fighting doesn't matter. Kimbo brought people with his background in street fighting. Brock, while yes, an NCAA wrestler, like a collegiate champion wrestler, sure, okay, it's very true. No one cares though. There are lots of collegiate wrestlers out there who no one knows. Brock Lesnar was a phenom in the WWE, and that's where his X Factor came from. People wanted to see that big personality get up there and do what he did. And the only reason why he had the ability was because he's an NCAA wrestler to begin with. If he had just been a WWE guy, he would have gotten there and gotten squashed even harder than he eventually did. By guys like Shane Carwin, who started and Ubering, who continued the slaughter. Even Cain Velasquez got a sweet piece of him too. Like, a lot of the best guys like really tore him apart. Guys who were like at the right size, who were even more juiced out, who had much more experience in the MMA game than Brock did. Again, Brock's lack of experience with a more fundamental striking well-roundedness really harmed him. And that's ultimately why I have to give Brock the higher level than Kimbo. Because Brock not only had some of the skills necessary to pay the bills, but he also had like an even crazier X Factor than either CM Punk or Brock. Or Kimbo, excuse me. So he's getting my number 11 spot. My 10 spot at this point has to go to Sakuraba. Now, it might be I'm the wrong guy to be talking about Sakuraba, because I don't really know much about Sakuraba. I wasn't big on Pride when it was super famous. I don't really know too much about the organization. I don't know much about Japan. I'm not Japanese. In some ways, I know that I'm the wrong guy to be speaking on this. But I do know that Sakuraba is a living legend. I know that he is famous as the Gracie Killer. You know, a man who single-handedly destroyed the reputation of an entire family of jiu-jitsu practitioners. And that's not anybody's fault but the Gracies for being so pig-headed and unable to adapt and grow as martial artists. But Sakuraba, it's not his problem. Sakuraba had no problem just beating the dog crap out of their whole entire family over and over and over and over again. And after the Gracies had beaten so many Japanese guys, the Japanese public was more than happy to welcome Sakuraba with open arms as a legend in their community. It's like, frankly, the Gracies had defeated a lot of guys who were very, very dear to the Japanese. He was Renzo Gracie. I think so. One of them. Who just completely destroyed a lot of their heroes, a lot of their Japanese wrestlers and things like that. At some point, I think that this is like a story I only heard once. A lot of times I hear these stories over and over again. But one Japanese fighter, and I think he had a background in pro wrestling. He got a bunch of dudes together, and they went to Brazil, and they challenged either Rogerio or Renzo or one of those R names. I don't know. There's so many fucking Gracies out there. Can't be expected to hold them all up. He went over there, and a bunch of paparazzi had followed him, gone with him. And when he arrived at the Gracies camp, Renzo, I guess, told all the paparazzi to stay outside. And they went inside, and they fought. And apparently Renzo, I hate that. I don't know if it's him or not. Right? I'm sure someone's going to come up in the comments and be like, oh, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I know at least part of it. But whoever the Gracie was beat the crap out of him. And then they let the paparazzi come in. And once that happened, the Japanese public basically felt like they got stabbed. Because one of their most popular fighters got beaten up. Again, I should really get the names of these guys, but like sometimes digging up these facts is really, really difficult. Let's see if I can pull it up here. He's Japanese wrestlers. Blah, 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 blah. Rickson. It was Rickson Gracie. It was Yoji Anjo. That's right. And he didn't show up in Brazil. He went to LA to challenge Rickson. So happy I took the 5 seconds to Google this. Good for me. Alright, so now we got all the details. Rickson versus Yoji Anjo. Alright. Well, Sakuraba was the avenging hero for the Japanese, who single-handedly destroyed, let's see, how many Gracies did Sakuraba have? How many Gracies did Sakuraba beat? Oh, this is gonna be rich. Hoyler, Renzo, Ryan, Hoyce. He beat a lot of them. Yeah, I could see why they call him the Gracie Killer. I don't think any of them have been defeated at that point. I think basically they're all undefeated because nobody was really screwing around with any kind of catch wrestling at the time. I do know something about catch wrestling. I know that it's like a perfect counter to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I also know that it exists in Brazil as an alternative to Jiu-Jitsu, and that it's more associated often with the poor people, and where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is more associated with the fancy rich people. But again, I'm not Brazilian. I'm an American. I'm a Californian. I know stuff about California around here. Unfortunately, in California, our education and extracurriculars are usually just relegated to YouTube and sitting around trying not to get robbed or having our cars jacked these days. So, yeah, I don't really go anywhere. Yeah, I don't go anywhere these days. I'm trying to go back to Jiu-Jitsu, though. Because, again, I'm a rich guy. Just kidding. Moving right along. Good on you, Sakuraba. Living legend, Gracie Killer. You're the man. And that's your X Factor. You're bringing out some people, butts in seats, to see the living legend hero who brought it back for Japan. probably talk about that a little more. Yeah, if I was a Japanese person and my pride had been like systematically destroyed by a bunch of shit talking Brazilian guys who live in America, yeah, watching a pro wrestler come over and just knock the crap out of them, submit them at their own game of submission wrestling. Yeah, I could definitely see how the people of Japan would definitely show up for his fights. All right, moving right along. All right, and number 9 on the list. I think 1, 2, 3. I don't think I know how to count. All right, more fancy editing. Next on our list. Oh my god, never mind. Oh my god. I'm so dumb. How did I mess this up? Okay, fancy editing. 3, 2, 1. Next on our list is Jon Jones. Now, first and foremost, I do not like Jon Jones. I know that people say he's the greatest of all time. Okay, all right, maybe he is. But let me ask you this. Does the greatest of all time have to cheat every single fight? Is that the mark of the greatest of all time? Imagine if Michael Jordan just like constantly paid off every single ref. He's like, okay, I'm just gonna slip the ref $25,000 here, there, every single where. Hopefully no one notices. What if he put springs in his shoes? What if Michael Jordan put a remote control inside the basketball so that it always goes inside? I could always make sure that other people's didn't go inside. Would you still count him as the best of all time? No, probably not. Those are not huge. Those are huge, like, cheats, right? Right? So why should we give the same courtesy to Jon Jones? Why? For what reason? How many times do he have to be jacked up on steroids? How many times do he has to poke people in the eyes? Or kick them in their knees? How many times? For what reason do we give him this pass? And still call him the greatest, when there are guys who never cheated, or at least never got caught for cheating. Never got even, like, mentioned in the conversation of cheating. Guys like George St. Pierre and Demetrius Johnson. Or Fedor. I look at these three guys as being the best of the best of the best. Very, very, very little in the way of any kind of controversy about anything. They all just showed up with amazing skills. And all of them have losses, sure. Hell, even Jon Jones is a loss because of cheating. 12-6 elbows against Matt Hamill. Hello. Come on now. The man's only loss is because of DQ from cheating. Okay, you might be coming down on Mazzagatti for being a bad ref, but you know what? I kind of respect Mazzagatti for DQing him on those. And, you know, ultimately it wasn't actually Mazzagatti who made the call. It was Matt Hamill, right? Matt Hamill knew he was going to lose. Matt Hamill knew he didn't have a shot. JBJ is just too good. Yeah, and that's the other thing about John Bones. He's like, Matt Hamill is a very, very, very good wrestler, right? Matt Hamill out-wrestled Tito Ortiz. Very, very few guys could claim to be able to do that. But Jon Jones could. And he made it look easy. So what does it say for our boy? When he's so talented, but he still chooses to cheat. That's his X factor, though. That's why, in my opinion, he's managed to make it so far. People are very interested in the villain storyline of John Jones, the magnanimous cheater, the guy with the quote-unquote perfect record, which I don't acknowledge. I think he's eaten some losses before that he didn't get recognized on, and he should have been. He's had some bad performances, or at least not so stellar performances. Performances where he looked human, which is not typical to him. So, I'm putting him right below Sakuraba. And now next on the list, we're going to talk about some people who are not in the conversation of the best of the best. This is going to really only be one of the best of the best. And they're not on this list. Because those guys were on the lists of the best of the best. They didn't have to be anything special on the mic. They didn't have to have an X factor. They just had to have a super S factor, which made them super good in the cage. That's all they need. Oh my god, I'm really starting to understand the pain in the ass of trying to have a quiet recording session. Alright, moving right along. Alright, the next up is a guy who, when I think of Sakuraba, I'm immediately reminded of this guy because they're very, very similar to each other in a lot of ways. And that's Genki Sudo. Genki Sudo. Oh. Sakuraba and Genki Sudo are very, very similar because they had like a really interesting walkouts. You know. But Genki Sudo took the entertainer factor to the next level. He did things that Sakuraba, I don't want to say he didn't have the balls to do, but it's hard to match the overwhelming levels of talent that Genki Sudo has. A singer, a dancer, an actor, a politician, a filmmaker, a this, a that, a the other. Who else has this resume in MMA? Like, basically nobody. He is a renaissance man. I watched like a 5-minute video of Genki Sudo just before I recorded this. My god. The dude is magical. He's so much fun to watch. He popping, locking in the ring, doing pro wrestling moves against guys who are hundreds of pounds heavier than him. That's the other thing. He's doing freak show fights, doing some super duper flashy kicks, super duper flashy grappling. And that's another thing I really give this guy credit for. He's so stylish in everything he does. My god. I really wish that we still lived in an age where guys like this still fought. But, he's kind of just a one of a kind, you know? There's really nobody else really like him. You know, he doesn't need to shit talk. He doesn't need to pretend to be like some sort of badass. He doesn't need to cheat or be a villain. He doesn't need to destroy a family of monsters that people don't like. You know, he doesn't need to do any of that stuff because he's just so fascinating to watch in the ring and on the way to the ring and on the way out of the ring and sometimes out of the ring completely and nothing to do with the ring at all. You know, what a guy. That's promotional gold right there. Um, yeah. Hats off to Genki Sudo, my number 8. Next is a guy who's kind of the opposite. A guy who is actually quite boring to watch. In a lot of ways. I mean, he's sort of an exciting fighter. I can't say he's boring as a fighter. He has a lot of energy in the ring. Very, very good wrestler. And sort of an okay striker. You know, a spirited striker, I'd say. But not great at it. But what this guy really, really excelled at was being a supervillain. And that is Colby Covington. Yes, number 7, Colby Covington. Yeah, he was nothing, really, before he fought Damian Maia in 2017. Like, who is he? According to him, when he was, like, being interviewed by Candace Owens, Colby was being threatened with being cut because nobody really wanted to watch his fights, right? So, he said some pretty wild shit about Brazilians being wild animals. Filthy animals, actually. And Brazil being a dump. Like the entire country. You know, I don't know anything about Brazilians. Because, you know, here in America, when people say something like, usually when someone says America sucks, then like half the crowd will be like, yeah, America sucks. It sucks here. You know, which is so ridiculous to me. But the Brazilians, they hated him for that. He really became a villain. And they let him have it. After that, there was no getting rid of him. He became too valuable to the company. He was like, oh, he's a draw now. We have to keep him because he's a bad guy. It's easy to be a bad guy. Just gotta like say some really, really nasty stuff. It's hard to become a good guy. You gotta be like honest and forthright and come off as genuine. And Colby Covington just like fully embraced the fake bad guy role. And it worked. It really worked. Last time I checked, he's looking at, what, about $4 million? He has about $4 million in the bank. It's a lot more than a lot of fighters have, because a lot of fighters are barely scraping by, barely making payments on their apartment. A lot of them just sleep on couches. They're broke. So, you know, as a promotional golden boy, he's maybe I shouldn't say he's a golden boy, but he's gold. It's hard to get away. Hard to blah 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 blah. Hard to say no to having him on a card. So, and he did pretty well for himself. You know, he proved himself in the cage. He beat up Robbie Lawler. Set a record actually during that fight. He punched Robbie Lawler 541 times. It's more than Chael Sonnen. There's who did he beat? He beat up Tyron Woodley, which is always good to me. I hate Tyron Woodley. There's no one who's a bigger actual villain than Tyron Woodley. He's a guy. Tyron Woodley is like the most hateable dude, like the most just pathetic guy in all of the UFC's history, especially for a champion. My God, there's no one like to hate more than Tyron. I'm so in love with you. Oh my God, I should really just post that. Hang on, I'm gonna go find the post. Here it is. Click.
Oh, I'm so in love with you. Oh, I'm so done with you. But I'm still in love with you.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so Tyron, just don't ever do that again. Thanks. Speaking of the welterweight division, let's talk about Jorge Masvidal, our number 6. Jorge Masvidal actually started his career. Oh, excuse me. I had a bunch of veggies today, and it's caused me some acid. I should say acid, but you know, I got some burps. Anyway. Jorge Masvidal. Sorry, it's getting a little late. Masvidal started his career fighting people in the backyard of Kimbo Slice. They called him up one day. I was like, hey, you want to fight this dude? And he showed up. And that's kind of where he got like a little name. And then from there, he got sort of picked up by a bunch of other promotions. You know, didn't get picked up by the big ones right away, of course, but he eventually made his way into the WEC, which got absorbed by UFC, and by default, he became a UFC fighter thereafter, right? But he wasn't, like, nobody really knew him, you know? Short hair, Jorge Masvidal, nobody knows that guy. Nobody knows short hair Masvidal, right? That guy is an afterthought. Long hair Masvidal who needs Ben Askren in the face, Masvidal who 3 pieces and a soda, Leon Edwards. Yeah. Yeah. That guy is a promotional golden boy. That guy is a gangster. That guy's a thug. Yeah, that guy very, very popular. Even though he's like, I personally think that his fighting skills are like pretty much striking only, and he's okay at jiu-jitsu, and everything else is just kind of like, nah, he's certainly not a good wrestler. Yeah, I don't think much of him as a fighter. I think he's just promotional gold, and that's it. Like, he's just kind of mid. Like, if he were to fight Colby, man to man, I think Colby would have taken him. Unfortunately, I think that fight pretty much fell through. We never got to see that one, but that would have been great.
You sure about that?
That would have been amazing. Ugh, so sad we never got to see that. I don't think. Let me just double check real quick. Masvidal versus Covington. Oh wait, did that happen? That did happen. I'm dumb. Wow. That was shocking. Turns out Jorge Masvidal doesn't know how to wrestle. And he pisses about getting poked in the eye. Okay, I feel dumb. Well, we don't always know everything, do we? My understanding was this fight got canceled. I don't know why I didn't notice it was here. Oh well. Fancy editing, I guess. Moving right along. Oh. Oh, the undefeated one, the real bad guy, the American gangster. Chael P. Sonnen. Undefeated, undisputed, never lost a round. Anderson Silva, you absolutely suck. So many great lines came out of him. The only person I ever known who made opportunities with their mouth was Tito's ex-wife. Like, just some of the things that he said just stuck in my mind forever. The first time the Nogueira brothers came to America, Little Nog tried to feed it. Big Nog tried to feed it a carrot, I can't remember. Fuck. So stupid.
Las Vegas, when the Nogueira brothers first touched down in America, there was a bus this is a true story. There was a bus that pulled up to a red light, and Little Nog tried to feed it a carrot while Big Nog was petting it. He thought it was a horse. This really happened. Do you believe me that happened?
Not really.
He tried to feed a bus a carrot. And now you're telling me that country has computers? I didn't know that.
Just the level of brashness that he feeds those lions with are just so... Oh my God. I can't believe the balls on that man sometimes, but that's what makes him JLP Sonnen. You know, there's nobody like that guy. He's the one and only. And frankly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I knew about Chael Sonnen before this, because I've been watching UFC since like 2005. And I was a fan of it since the 2000, ever since Tito Ortiz became like a name. I was interested, but there was no way to watch it really. Like, we were too poor to pay-per-view, so I just had to like make do with the commercials. And my dad and I would, like, every time we go to Blockbuster, I never thought to like rent the UFCs. God, missed opportunities. I could have been a part of a history. Anyway, so my experience with Chael Sonnen was just that he was a wrestler. I remember him saying this one time. This one thing that he said, and it's all I remembered about him was like, "I'm a Republican, and we don't sit between people's legs." Strangely enough, he would lose most of his fights between people's guys' legs. He would just get triangled and lose. That was like the bane of his existence. He was an exceptionally overwhelming wrestler. Obviously, we watched him like destroy Anderson Silva's life in that first fight. It was really, really crazy how good of a wrestler he was during that fight. We didn't really see too much after that. He kind of faded a little bit. Like, he never really had that level of a dominant performance against anyone else again. Never happened. But my God, his skills on the mic are killer. And he's continues still to this day. He may have ever captured gold. I don't even think he was ever interim. But there is only one Chael Sonnen. And he's never tanked his career the same way that other guys who've had more success on the mic have. Like, Chael's kept it pretty intelligent. Like, his chess mastery of the microphone is second to none. Like, he's not the best of the best of the best, but he is pretty top tier when it comes to talking crap. And I do love him for that. And if he were to ever come back, if he were to ever, like, if he opens a lemonade stand, I'm there. I'm just saying. Big Chael Sonnen fan. Love the guy. Next up on our list is a guy that I always think about when I think of Chael Sonnen, and for some reason, I don't know why, but I think of Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping is, in the beginning, I really didn't like him very much. He was just sort of a dick, and it's funny, the word dick is often used to describe him, especially in his early years. Like, think about it. Most people, when they bring him up, they don't say jerk or asshole or prick. They say dick. He was a dick, and he was a dick. It's the perfect word to describe his behavior: spitting on people and being really, really, really rude. He wasn't the asshole of the UFC. He wasn't the bad guy or the villain. He was the dick of the UFC. Like, a very classy podcast we're having here. Good session here, Cage Radio. He was terrible. And, frankly, I never really looked at his career as being that stellar either. I always looked at him as being like a lifelong journeyman, or worse, not even a journeyman, like a lifelong gatekeeper, or lower than that, just a guy who showed up and just fought and made money and lost a lot of the time, but sometimes won too. It wouldn't be until later in his career, after Vitor Belfort knocked his eyeball out of his head, that he actually went on the longest fight streak that he'd had since he got in the UFC. 5 fights. 5-fight win streak. Pretty good. Culminating in the knockout of... Well, first, he had like a string of victories, but like the big ones were Anderson Silva, obviously. When you beat one of the greatest of all time, like one of the GOATs. And I really do think that Anderson Silva is the middleweight GOAT. Like, who do you think is... Who else? Izzy? Nah. No. I don't think Izzy's the middleweight GOAT. I think Anderson's the middleweight GOAT. If you were around back in the days for Anderson Silva's run, you remember how indestructible he seemed. He is the greatest. So, and you know, he beat him. He actually got KO'd during the fight, the flying knee. But he still came back and beat him. Like, hats off, man. Hats off. And eyes out. Because the guy managed to beat Luke Rockhold in the first round with one eye. A single eyeball in his skull. Cyclops champion. Now, you know, he managed to turn his brash personality, which a lot of people associated him with being a dick for, into what people wanted to come see him for. He managed to harness it into like something that people like sort of enjoyed. He wasn't just a jerk anymore. He wasn't just a dick. He was like a hero. He'd been around for so long at that point. We had to look at it and be like, you know what? Congrats. You're still here. When a lot of guys, like who else was still here from the third season of The Ultimate Fighter? Nobody. Like Kendall Grove was gone almost a full decade ago. More than a decade ago, actually. Like, yeah. Long time ago. Kendall Grove I think he was out like right after the Evan Tanner fight. Evan Tanner's last fight. Rest his soul. So, you know, and now he's like wildly successful on the mic. You know, he has a podcast, he has a show, he runs it with Daniel Cormier. You know, they're always talking all the time, and you know that show is really great. I love listening to his stuff. Like I always find good insights. I find him funny. He's fun to listen to. You know, he wasn't just a promotional golden boy, especially in the latter years of his career, but even now. That's why I think of him and Chael Sonnen as being really similar, because they have like similar career paths. So, like they both had like really strong microphone skills. They're both really funny. They're both like really good at analyzing fighters and situations and things like that. So like, yeah, I put them two together. And that would make Michael Bisping my number 4. Number 3 is a guy I don't really know very well. And I'm never going to know him very well. Because I'm not part of his generation. You know, I don't care about tattoos on my face. I don't care about having like a rainbow colored hair. I'm not a diehard Sean O'Malley fan. But I recognize the gold. I recognize what he's worth. I see what he means to be in the UFC. Hell, I'm with it, you know. I understand, I get it. The dude has serious skills. The dude has a super unique look. He's skinny, but he's starching people with a striking style, with like a fight IQ I've really never seen before in any kind of striker. Like, if he was the size of John Jones and he fought John Jones, I'm sure he'd win. I'm sure. He's just, his timing, his ability to read people is just like second to none. I've never seen anything like it. He's the GOAT, I think, in some ways, of MMA striking. I know people are saying that, oh, yeah, Pereira, he's the GOAT. Really? Watch Sean O'Malley. Watch his ability to bait people into making small micro movements that put them just slightly out of position and open them up for like devastating knockouts. And his ability to throw is just so perfect. You know, a knockout artist at 135 pounds. My God, who else do we know? Nobody. So, of course, yeah, Sean O'Malley, butts in seats. Golden boy. Yep. Welcome to the Sugar Show, indeed. Number 2. Now we're at like people who transcended the sport. Not by being part of like a separate organization like Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar really transcended the sport for different reasons. He was already a superstar in an organization that like built people based on their personalities alone. We're talking Ronda Rousey. Ronda was a force of nature. She was. I'm really trying to sat there and thought about like why was Ronda so different from these other chicks? First thing, Ronda was an absolute jaw-dropping, gorgeous woman, and she was white. And don't hate on me too hard, okay? All right, there's a lot of white fighters out there, okay? But she looked like an. And I know she wasn't necessarily a teenager, but she kind of looked like a teenager in some ways. You know, she looked like a young white girl who would beat the living fucking shit out of you, right? Now think of all the weak ass white girls out there who don't know how to throw a punch at all, who are completely like who feel powerless. Looking at her, watching her just breaking people's arms off, flipping them onto the ground, knocking out Betch Cohen. Let me just say, Betch is one of the most embarrassing names that a person could have. Betch. Betch Cohen. Saying some horrible things about Ronda's dad. Like, let me tell you, like, if it wasn't for the fact that Holly Holm had, like, such a fucking amazing performance against Ronda, probably my second favorite fight of all time might have been Betch Cohen versus Ronda, because she just knocked the crap out of her so quickly, and she deserved it. And if there's one thing that brings me into a fight, it's a good storyline. And that's one of my favorite things, is the stories behind the fights. And that was a great story. So, flashback. Ronda Rousey's father, I believe, has committed suicide long ago, and it's like sitting in her like a stone in her heart. So Betch Cohen brings it up to her to try to play mind games with her. Ronda, not to be outdone, starches her, busts the career right out of her face. It was after this that like people like were just like, okay, well, Ronda's clearly the greatest fighter of all time, never mind gender. She's just the best of the best of the best. She's amazing. She's above the rest of the game. She's ahead of the pack. She's like beyond the curve. Starching that woman really made Ronda even think that her striking was the best of the best, which is ultimately what led to her downfall. It's like one of the only people on this list who had like not just like the highest of highs. Like, she might have even, in some ways, like, been close to making more money than Connor. But, her meteoric rise was only matched by how hard she fell. And she only fell for 2 reasons, in my opinion. One, because she had a terrible training camp that filled her head with nonsense ideas about her having an elite level of striking. That Eben Tarverdyan guy, that dude was a weasel. It was a snake. He was just there to collect money and clout off of the back of Ronda. Ronda's mom knew. If you look at Ronda's mom's interviews, she's always just like, I hated that guy. That guy was no good. Bad news all the way around. He was absolutely right. He was just a yes man. You watch the Holly Holm fight with Ronda. After the first round, Edmund's in there like saying some of the most ridiculous, stupid shit you could ever hear. You're doing a good job. You're doing perfect. You're doing amazing. Just keep it up.
Beautiful. Stay nice and patient. Relax. Breathe, okay? Let's rinse that mouth, okay? Don't swallow it, rinse it. See you. Cam, beautiful work. Listen to me.
Edmund
Okay?
Tarverdian.
All she wants to do is catch you with that left.
Like, oh my God, were we not all watching the same fight where Ronda was getting the brakes beaten off of her? And that's what I mean. Edmund is just a yes man, but I don't even think that is his fault. Because look at Ronda after the fight. She could not even talk to the media about it. She couldn't take any criticism. That's why she avoided the media. She told people that she was avoiding the media because she was so focused on the fight. But we all know that's not true, because every time someone tries to corner her about it, she just says, I don't want to talk about that right now. Let's move on. Or she walks out of the interview. I've never seen a fighter just act that way. She's the only one. And it's just so deflating, because the women's division without Ronda has been a shadow of its former self. There's never been like an electrifying force like her in it before or since. She was the fighting of the women's division. And without her, it's frankly sort of flat on its face. It really is. I haven't heard one whiff of interest from the women's divisions in such a long time, and it's such a shame, because women's MMA is one of the only women's sporting events that I used to get really excited about, but there's like no stars anymore. There's like no interest. And that's so sad, because during that era with the Holly Holmes, with Amanda Nunes, the Betch Coheas, with the Misha Tates, like the Ronda Rouseys, that's all over now. You know, there is a new bunch of girls out there like Valentina Shevchenko and things like that, but like, what do I really see out of them? Most of them are starting like OnlyFans accounts, and I don't respect that shit at all. I don't have any of their OnlyFans accounts, and that's honest. If you have bought their accounts, that's cool. I mean, I'm not hating on you for it, but like, I'm not here for the age of prostitution. Okay, I'm here for the age of fighting. I want to see some good storylines. I want to see some drama. Like, I want a little bit of pro wrestling mixed with my MMA. Okay, that's what I want. I don't want a little bit of Channel X mixed with my MMA. Okay, that's how I feel about it. That's how I'm always going to feel about it. All right. If I want to look up someone on XTube, I will, but otherwise, no. Ronda, you let us all down with your cowardice and your inability to face your own wrongdoings, and it ultimately cost you career and the respect of the world. And you have no one to blame but yourself. You could have faced Edmund Tarverdian. You could have told him you're not a real striking coach. But no, you didn't want someone sitting there telling you that you were doing things wrong. You probably didn't want to hear someone tell you, hey, your striking sucks and you need to get a professional. Nope. Can you imagine what Emmanuel Stewart could have done with her? Because she's obviously a very, very gifted athlete. Nope. She just wanted a yes man. So, my award for the biggest flip-flop goes to you. From the highest of the highs to the lowest of the lows. You got beaten so bad, you had to go to WWE. And you didn't even get beaten by anyone else except yourself. Everyone takes losses. Even our next guy. Our number one. The ultimate golden boy. If you had to be told who this guy was, you're probably not an MMA fan. You're probably not even a human being. I'm of course talking about Conor McGregor. Conor. Part of his mystique was like his left hand and karate skills, you know, his ability to like just beat the tar out of people on the feet. Obviously his grappling was never that great. And really nothing to like to write home about. But none of that mattered compared to his skills on the mic. His microphone shit talking skills are absolutely amazing. Oh my god, I'm getting tired. His microphone skills are just out of this world. some of the things he has so many great lines. Who the fuck is that guy? Like shit like that. Like you're making balloon animals with one hand and gang signs with the left. Like it's just some funny stuff just coming out of his mouth. Like I can't even scratch the surface of how funny he was. And still is. The problem with him though is that his inconsistency of self. Like sometimes he's like, "Oh, I'm just being respectful. Nothing but respect between me and this guy here. Oh, respect in the world." Remember the first time when he faced Dustin Poirier? Dustin has that charity that Conor swore that he would donate to, and Conor didn't do it. Honestly, more than anything, more than him punching that old guy in that bar for not drinking his whiskey, more than him throwing that dolly at that bus, like those things don't really bother me as much, quite frankly. And even though they are kind of disgusting things, they don't really bother me as much, especially the dolly throwing thing. I don't, whatever. Throw as many dollies as you want. If they wanted to, those guys could have gotten off the bus and beaten the dog shit out of him, for all they could have cared. They chose not to, because why? I don't know. I guess he just cowed them with his dolly throwing skills. The thing that really bothered me was when he swore that he would donate to Dustin Poirier's charity, and then he didn't. Nothing pisses me off more than the fake good guy stuff. When saying that you're going to do something nice for someone and then just being like, nah, can't. I'm out. Ain't about it. My bad. For whatever reason. And then to turn around and double down on the dickishness by just immediately starting to talk shit about Dustin Poirier. And then when he broke his foot during the fight, he was like, "Doctor stoppage had nothing to do with me." Those are the cringy parts of Conor McGregor for me. It's not the sexual assault allegations. I wasn't there for that shit. Who knows? I haven't looked into it. Maybe it's way more obvious. But a lot of guys get accused of that stuff, and it is really heinous. Certainly I'm not saying it's not, but I've also been accused of sexual assault myself, and I certainly have never assaulted someone sexually. So I kind of don't look at those as being the most significant things, because I know how often people can get accused of that stuff and it's not real. But when you pretend to be a good guy and you're not, that is where you start to show the cracks and chinks in your personality armor. Those are the things that make me think, okay, maybe you are capable of sexual assault. Maybe you are. But true to form, whereas Holly Holm had a meteoric collapse, Conor McGregor is a juggernaut. It doesn't matter what controversy comes his way. He still outsells every single fucking other fighter on the planet. It doesn't matter if he's in his prime or not. It doesn't matter if he's juiced or not. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Conor just showing up is enough. We're getting pretty late here. It's almost 10 o'clock p.m. California time. I could go on. I could talk about some honorable mentions. Some guys who I think deserve to be on this list, but I frankly don't have time to mention them or bring them up. I have to go to bed. I do have a day job. Maybe one day I'll have enough followers here to where I can afford to record more often. I can afford to have this radio channel running 24/7, but until then, I have to mind my temporal necessities. So that's what you guys got. Here's a countdown. 13, CM Punk. 12, Kimbo Slice. 11, Brock Lesnar. 10, Sakuraba. 9, John Jones. 8, Genki Sudo. 7, Colby Covington. 6, Jorge Masvidal. 5, Chael Sonnen. 4, Michael Bisping. 3, Sean O'Malley. 2, Ronda Rousey. And number 1, Conor McGregor. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys agree, if you guys disagree. And who's the greatest promotional golden child? Of Pride, WC, MMA in general. Until next time, my name's Thor, and this is Cage Radio.